just in the mask realm of the context of that statement, that the claim that basically people who are against masks or not, at least I would say even will include people who are not using masks. How are we hurting how are we hurting the wrestling community? How are we hurting wrestling necessarily? But we'll just take my academy for an example because we don't have a mask mandate. You know, is my academy or my people, are we hurting wrestling?
Right. Why would it be hurting?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's show. Myself and Isaac Knable holding it down. He's rocking it out at the school. And we're going to talk about some interesting stuff today. First time jumping on the restream together. We'll see how it goes. What's going on, my man?
Oh, not much. How you doing?
Just
getting a little lunch break going, you know.
Locking down the lunch break. I headed down early to, as you may or may not know, I have a 45-minute drive from my house down to the wrestling academy. So I headed down early today so we could work on trying to get a little podcast action happening. See if we can get some good videos out, good content. We had some things we've been talking about a little bit. I sent you some stuff on some masks. I know that's a popular topic in today's society.
For sure.
I was talking to a parent on the way down about some weight cutting stuff, so maybe we could get into some of that. And we'll keep it short and sweet. I know you only got a short window today, and this is kind of a test run, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe get some feedback from some people, but we'll talk as long as we're able to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sent you a tweet I saw earlier today that basically was insinuating that people who are I don't even like using the word anti-maskers because I think it's a silly word.
Yeah.
But for lack of a better term, I guess that's what we'll say. But they said that they are hurting wrestling. I have some thoughts on that, but I wanted to see what you think. I'll let you jump first. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't know, you know, after kind of going through a season last year, I mean, it's always, you know, most important, I think, is, you know, always, I mean, as a coach, you're trying to keep your kids safe and make sure practice is safe and the environment for them that they're training in. So, you know, kind of helping through a high school season last year, I mean, I would, you know, whatever they wanted us to wear, if I needed to wear a hazmat suit, if that meant the kids could wrestle, I would do it, and trying to fight all the quarantine rules as far as guiding, you know, trying to keep kids out of quarantine, I think was the biggest struggle as far as, you know, the mask thing. So it doesn't really bother me much. I mean, the mask, I mean, as far as it hurting or helping, I mean, I guess you could look at a lot of different views on that and do they work, do they not? But, you know, being in the schools and kind of watching that, I mean, it seems like the schools that are requiring them have less kids. Now, do they, what, you know, so I haven't, you know, I don't know if anybody's seen a good hard study. I mean, most people just get their information from whoever tweets it or really whatever they want to see, I think is what people tend to go to and tend to believe in.
I was listening to a guy today and he was explaining, I guess, that there was a study that came out and I haven't got to look it up because it was on the way down here. So I need to check it out. But I think we have our first I guess you could call like double-blind real study about the efficacy of masks. And it was kind of saying they work. I think it was placing it around a 9% decrease that they were seeing with masks. And that's not enormous, but it's pretty big in terms of, I mean, when you're talking about 9%, if you just say deaths, which I don't know if that's a fair one, but just because that's an easy one. But if you say we had, 300,000 people dying, you take out 9%, that's, just under 30,000 people, so that's definitely, it definitely helps. And I can't see how masks don't help. But I think the biggest problem comes down to just the mandates and the choice of free will and for people to live their lives the way they want live their lives. And I think a lot of that, that's what you have to get into, because, wrestling is an activity that is it's optional. Nobody's making you show up and do it. And I think if you're uncomfortable with the risks, I don't see any problem with you sitting out or not participating, or maybe even requesting, other procedures be put in place if it makes you uncomfortable. I know that at our academy, we have basically had no mask mandates. We've had no kind of, I guess you would say, restrictions on parents coming in. We haven't had numbers restrictions or contact restrictions since sometime last year. And we really haven't had any problems, so to speak. And not to say that nobody has got COVID. People have done a really good job of communicating with us, whether they're sick or they were around someone who tested positive and quarantining themselves. Everybody's been doing a really good job, with us. I can't speak to anywhere else, but with us, of exhibiting that personal responsibility and taking care of themselves and taking care of the people directly around them. And I think a lot of people, the biggest problem I think a lot of people have is that there's a lot of people telling you what you should and shouldn't do. And they're people that not only have you never met, but they don't live anywhere near you. They're not in your community, and they have nothing to do with your day-to-day life. And, I think that it's one thing to suggest things. It's one thing to say that this is probably the best practice. But when you start mandating what everyone needs to do based on what your experience is and your location and the things you're doing and your procedures and your local guidelines, I think that's where it gets a little dicey for people.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the same thing. I mean, I have some problems with that as well. But I mean, as far as I think the biggest thing is I've always just try to be transparent, right? If somebody's sick or if somebody doesn't feel good, we just keep trying to remind people of that. If we want to keep training and, obviously trying to keep kids healthy, but just communicate, let us know what's going on. And if you feel sick, don't come or, so if our kids get quarantined, they've done a good job at kind of, not coming to practice. So, the whole point hopefully is to keep the kids training, keep them exercising and keep improving their health, focus on how do we improve their health. And, the mandates and stuff, and it just goes back and forth. It is a contact sport. So, with this virus going on, it's definitely challenging, and I think we're kind of adapting and, definitely learning how to move forward with it. And then you got different strands coming out, and, so, I think people obviously have to make the best choice for what they're comfortable with and what their family is. And that can also be hard too, though. I kind of get everybody's opinion, everybody's got a different view and maybe a different story on it. But if you're willing to let your kids go and participate in a sport or go to school, there's obviously a chance that, the way this virus spreads, that kids are going to contract it. And, how do we try to, this is America, right? You usually wait till you get sick to try to fix it. But what's preventative steps we can take to improve our health,
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that a lot of people aren't talking about is that, I think that we should be doing more, especially within the wrestling community, of beating those drums on preventative measures that everyone can do that are non-controversial. Taking your vitamins, getting exercise, which is not usually a problem we're talking about the athletes and the kids, but when we talk about parents, there's plenty of parents, wrestling parents, that aren't active enough, that have unhealthy lifestyles. There's lots of things that could be improved that are not controversial. Like we said, just getting more exercise, getting your vitamin D, taking your vitamin supplements, talk to your doctor about ways that you can supplement to improve your immune health. And I don't think that much of that I don't think anybody would really argue with that. But to boil it down, and then we'll get off of this topic, is final thoughts. Is someone who is pushing against masks, like myself, I wouldn't say that I am pushing against masks necessarily, but we'll just take my academy for an example because we don't have a mask mandate. Is my academy or my people, are we hurting wrestling?
I mean, I don't think so.
And I guess not to cut you off, but even if you don't think so, maybe what's the argument for that?
What's the argument that people choosing not to get vaccinated or not wearing masks?
Well, I don't even think we need to get into vaccination just in the mask realm for right now. We'll save the vaccination for another day. But just in the mask realm of the context of that statement, that the claim that basically people who are against masks or not, at least I would say even will include people who are not using masks. How are we hurting how are we hurting the wrestling community? How are we hurting wrestling? What's the argument for that?
Right. Why would it be hurting? Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say either way, just because I value the opinion of I just value people's opinion. Like, I'm going to do what I think's best for myself and my family. And I think everybody should do that. And on this topic, I mean, talk to doctors, talk to medical professionals, people in your lives that, it's kind of weird. I mean, we could go down that whole realm. All of a sudden now people, I mean, just know what you're talking about before you go and say stuff is my biggest thing. I mean, we got so many Google doctors and Twitter doctors out there. Like, I guess as the kids would say, that's cap. Like, what do you believe? Like, I don't know.
Well, I guess the argument for it hurting, I guess, would be maybe that by not masking, we're not. I guess there's higher numbers, more infections, and causing things to shut down, causing tournaments to cancel. I guess. I mean, but I haven't really experienced that recently. A little bit last year when everything was kind of up in the air. But I haven't experienced that in recent months, and obviously there's a lot less wrestling happening, so that could be part of it as well.
I think the kids aren't, from what I've read and heard. I mean, the kids don't seem to be spreading it as much. I think it's more, to me, I would argue that the kids don't need the masking as much as the adults do, because I think the kids are more adaptive and are willing to adjust so they can train and practice, versus I think some parents that are against preventative measures to help their health or the health of others are just totally, I probably have a better chance of spreading it to getting their kids quarantined, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make the argument. I'm going to make an argument that pro-maskers are hurting wrestling. All right. So this is not necessarily my opinion, by the way. I don't necessarily hold this.
I guess.
Yes. But my argument would be that through the masking, first of all, if we talk about masking, are we talking about, like, I think we have to decide first, are we talking about, kids wearing masks at practice? Or are we talking about when we hold a tournament and event that they have a mask policy in place for, participants and for spectators to wear masks, and participants would be exempt once they're competing? If we're talking about that, I think those are vastly different things. I don't know that I'm that hardcore against a mask policy being instituted for events. I don't know that I like it personally, but just from a standpoint of I don't really have a good argument against it other than freedom.
Right.
But I don't know if that's a good enough argument. But if we're talking about kids wearing masks during practice, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absurd. I don't understand why we have kids wearing masks and telling them that they can't shake hands, but we're going to blow a whistle and they're just going to wrestle full go like they normally would, and expect a mask to stay on. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion, as far as wrestling in a mask. Now, back to a point you made earlier, though, is when it comes down to it, if they tell me that my kids have to wear masks to compete and otherwise don't compete, well, then we'll do what we have to do that, right? It's not going to be the hill that I die on. But, I don't know. I would say
I don't agree with the kids. I mean, if you're healthy, like, I mean, I don't think they should wear it competing. I just don't think they would be effective. Full I mean, first of all, it's going to get full of sweat. Second of all, you're breathing through your mouth. I mean, when I wear a mask, I'm constantly realizing I'm breathing through my mouth. But yeah, I mean, tournament wise, I don't see it hurting. Like you said, if it's going to help lower the risk of a kid getting it at a tournament, then the adults, I don't. Why not wear them? It doesn't bother me. I mean, I would see that would be fine. I think just because obviously large gatherings, it's going to spread. I mean, probably all going to contract it at some point if we haven't, by now. But to me, that's just another step to, hey, keep these kids on the mat, keep these kids in school. Why not in a sense?
Yeah,
Besides,
that's a good point with some of the
someone
restrictions.
saying, so
With some of the
that's
restrictions,
kind of
it's keeping people off the mats, and that would be my argument with how you're hurting the sport. Is with some restrictions, you're either some people are choosing not to participate because they're nervous about it, and I get that. Like, I respect that. I'm not going to call someone out for that, but if some of it is being overhyped and seeming more dangerous than it is, what's happening is we're keeping some kids from participating, and they may be scared. And I've seen some of this firsthand with some kids that we've worked with, where they were really nervous about participating and they sat out for a really long time. And now they're back and they are participating, but they missed out on a lot. And some of them I have not come back. I have some that have never come back. I don't, and not come back to me. I mean, I haven't seen them wrestling anywhere. So I know of a couple kids that took off last year and have not done anything since. And those are kids that it's like, are they ever going to come back to wrestling? Who knows? And you'll have those kids anyway. I'm not saying that without COVID that wouldn't have happened. It's possible that happens anyway. It happens all the time. But my argument would be that with further restriction, listen, friction works, right? If you make things harder, fewer people will do it. So if you make it harder to participate in wrestling, and I think that there's already barriers to entry for families that have no connection to wrestling prior, right? If you don't have a parent that wrestled, if you don't have an uncle that wrestled that gets you into it and you just go try it, when you're met with friction, or if it's hard to sign up, or if a club shuts down, you'll just go find something else to do. And that would be my worry for how it would be negatively impacting the sport. And again, I don't know that that's my opinion, but that would be the argument for how it would be hurting the sport. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, and probably people are tired of talking about masks, and that's okay. But let's get on to some weight cutting stuff. So I was talking to a parent on the way down, and I was discussing about how I basically have some like general rules or rules of thumb. And they're not hard and fast, because I believe that the best strategy is whatever the best strategy is at that time, and it changes. So I have some rules that I would say are general guidelines, and you follow most of the time, but obviously certain situations call for different measures. So I don't know about you, if you want to kind of talk about some of the guidelines you have for your kids that you talk about for weight cutting.
Well, I mean, I think you could fix a lot of guidelines if you just told the parents to follow the same restrictions the kids have to.
That's true.
Look, you're telling your kid, the biggest thing I think is the thing that gets me the most is that parents don't communicate with the coach. They just kind of take the role of like, this is what weight you need to go, without even consulting a coach or someone knowledgeable about managing weight. So that first of all, that kind of bothers me. So I think a parent should be very involved with if they trust and believe in their coach. Obviously, I mean, you got to know what they're telling the kids. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're making a weight class. If a kid, if a kid weighs 100 pounds and the weight class is, 98 pounds or 106, I mean, where do you go on that? I mean, 2 pounds after you work out, But, the big thing is the smaller kids, the percentage gets so much smaller, so losing a pound for a 50 pounder is different than somebody weighing 150 pounds, But it is different. I don't really encourage it. I honestly wish youth wrestling, probably 6 or 8 and under had some type of, you just show up and that and don't even have weight classes. You just show up, weigh in, and they pair you up within that percentage of your weight.
All right, so let me ask you, what would you say to someone pushing back slightly on, like if someone were to make the argument to you that they want to agree with what you're saying, however, their concern is that when their kid gets to high school and is trying to reach the highest levels, they're going to have to do some weight cutting, managing of weight at least. How do you make sure that they're ready for that and kind of teach them things leading up to that, so that they're not just basically thrown into the fire as a freshman in high school? And maybe, not everyone has this luxury, but some people are on pretty good teams where to find a place in the lineup, you may have to cut to a weight that is slightly uncomfortable for you.
Yeah, I mean, and I've done it the wrong way. I've done it the right way, and it took me a long time to learn the right way. But I think they got to start earlier. Like I think if a kid needs to start now, August, September versus wait until November, to be, let's just, if they want to go 138 and they're, or that's the only place they can get a starting spot, and it's their senior year, like, well, don't wait till November to, most kids, depending on, I always look at their diet and stuff first, clean that up, and see what they're eating on that. Because if they change that, I mean, you could lose, that's 3-4 solid pounds of just cleaning up their diet, possibly, depending on the kid. But the extreme, right, the binge, and a lot of it's teaching them how to sweat, teach them how to do a sweat workout and how much water intake are they getting enough water. So, they're losing 3 to 6 pounds of practice. It's just, and then putting that back in. So it's really never staying down at that. Most kids, typical, they binge cut, wait till Thursday or Friday. And, I think it's definitely got to get the discipline on Sunday,
Yeah, that's
Sunday
actually a really good point. Is the Sunday is the biggest problem that I see in regards to what you're kind of talking about is the feeling of accomplishment from just making weight. And so, like, and I'm a victim of this, so I'm not saying this from a pointing fingers standpoint. This was me as well, which is that, it's so hard to make weight. And when you make weight and the relief is over, and then when you're done wrestling, all you want to do is reward yourself for what you did. So then you go stuff your face and eat everything in sight for 24 hours, and you're back to where you started the week before, right? And instead, trying to get through to kids that don't let this sacrifice be for nothing, right? And it's not for nothing because you had to make weight to participate and to wrestle, and you did that. But, use it to gain ground, right? Because every time you make weight, you're going to be able to get back up to a little bit lower weight if you manage it. But if you just go hog wild, you're going to go right back up to where you started from, right? So if I cut from 150 to 155 on Friday night, Saturday, or whatever, right? So then by Sunday evening, I'm back up to like 156, 157. And then I have to go back in on Monday, and start that whole process over again. Instead of, if I start the week at 155, when I weigh in, I kind of take it easy on Sunday, eat healthy, try to recover, maybe go to the sauna, get some work or get some water in me, kind of run some water through my system and come back in at 54, 55. But all right, if you got to wrap it up, we will lay it down.
Yeah, I got to get running
call
here.
It a day.
We need to pick back up on this topic. That was a good one. All right, man. Good seeing you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Isaac. I'm going to go ahead and keep recording some of my thoughts on this topic, and we'll continue without you for a couple minutes, but we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining. All right. So I guess to get in a little bit to my kind of philosophies here, some of the rules that I have, and again, these aren't hard rules necessarily. They're more of guidelines, places to start from, a structure to start with these kind of views and rules in place, and then doing what is best for you within that kind of framework. So some rules that I have are number one is no saunas and no plastics. And especially when we're talking about my biggest demographic, which is my middle school age kids, because that's what I have the most of right now. when I'm talking to them, I don't want any artificial means. That doesn't mean you never will. What it means is that I need you to understand what weight cutting really is, and that it's not sitting in a sauna for 15 minutes to lose a pound and calling it good. There are health benefits to sitting in a sauna. I think they're great for recovery. So it's not like saunas are all bad. But to me, it's a shortcut to circumvent the work, right? So a lot of kids, the problems that they make is they try to not eat and not work out, right? But we know that good food is good for us and working out is good for us, right? So we're skipping out on two things that are good for us when we could be getting both of those things, right? So eating another meal of good protein, some vegetables, some good fat, some healthy fats, getting a little bit of water in you and knocking out an extra workout is better than not eating and then sitting on the couch all night. Doing the extra. Anytime you can try to do extra to get your weight off, that's better than, like I say, sitting in a sauna or wearing a sauna suit, those types of things. Now, they're not the end of the world. I'm not one of those guys. It's like, if you wear a sauna suit, you're doing it wrong. And I've worn them. I've sat in the sauna. It's not, I don't want to be a hypocrite, but again, we're talking about from the base of like looking at starting in more of a middle school age, right? So I don't want my young kids doing it. So if I want them to understand what weight cutting really is and weight management really is. And if we're cutting too much weight, what ends up ultimately happening is our practices become weight cut sessions, and my kids become more focused on, hey, coach, what are we doing? How much live are we going? How many pounds do you think I'm going to lose? How much am I going to have to get off after practice? It's like, no, practice time is for practicing. It's not for cutting weight. You cut weight outside of practice, right? So even within my practices, making it to where, maybe sweatpants, but I don't really want hoodies. I don't want multiple layers while you're practicing because I want you to focus on the technique and your training. I want you to focus on being in the moment there and not worrying about what you're going to weigh at the end of the practice. So yeah, those are kind of some of my basic guidelines. Do it right, eat and work out extra. You should be doing extra workouts constantly. Not overworking yourself, making sure you're giving yourself plenty of time time to recover. But especially at the beginning of the season right now, you should be running every day. Especially if you think you're going to have any kind of weight cut coming up in the future. I would be running a minimum of 10 minutes every single day, getting up in the morning. And I would taper up from that. Right. So starting with maybe 10 minutes and take it up to 15 and work your way up to a 30-minute run and more if you feel good and you feel like doing it. But yeah, that's the gist of it. I'm sure some of you will have some comments and pushback, and that's great. Let us know if you have some feedback on our little podcast here where we don't have a name for it yet. This is our first day recording. So let us know what you thought. Let us know what we should do differently. We'd love to hear from you. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you the next time around. Peace.